everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I had the idea based off a lot of movie commentary YouTubers. I thought it'd be fun to build a room based off a movie and kind of do a review of that movie. I don't know if it'll take off, we'll see after this. I thought perfect way to start out this series would be talking about the newest adaptation of the Anne of Green Gables series, Anne with an E, which ran from 2017 to 2019. Anne with an E is based off the L.M. Montgomery series Anne of Green Gables, and is basically a big source of my inspiration because my island is called Avonlea, which is the fictional community which she lives on in Prince Edward Island in Canada. It's a really good series. I grew up with it, and the 1985 film adaptation with Megan Follows is basically, it's one of that trilogy is a really good set of films. I'm not a big film major, but I am an English major, so I will definitely be adding that into the mix, but I'm no way an expert to be talking about these things. I just kind of want to talk about them, and I'm going to use this opportunity to do so. So we're going to break it down by season, and I will try to use that weird YouTube thing so you can safely skip around. And if you want to try to avoid spoilers, I'm going to hopefully make this as spoiler-free as possible, but if you haven't seen the series and don't want to be risking getting spoiled, I would leave now, but make sure to leave a like before you do. That would help me out a lot. And go watch the show. Alright, so season 1 is probably going to be the shortest section, and probably the least amount of spoilers, because I can't be bothered to go rewatch it again. It's not that it was bad, it was just very by the book. Many people criticized the series upon its initial release for being just a darker retelling of the Anne series, and that's not what we wanted from the Anne series. We didn't want a Riverdale, a dark retelling. That was ooh god, no, too much of that going around already. And it was really staying a lot in the outline left by the 1985 version, and so I can't blame a lot of that criticism. I think I have the same kind of criticism. I think it's very fair. However, I don't think it means it was necessarily a disaster. So it's kind of hard not to do that when you're going by your source material like a book. People will snap if you go too far from the source and riot if you copy it exactly to the bone. It's the same problem with the Disney remakes that are live action. I hear they're doing Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I'm like, no guys, that's a bad idea. That's my Disney movie. Please do not. I don't want that. Also, a lot of those themes are kind of controversial. How are you gonna make those changes? Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the changes that they have made with those movies in particular aren't they still don't make a lot of sense, and it's not enough changes to bother retelling the story. Just leave things kind of where it is. So, one thing I liked that the Anne with an E started doing right in season 1 was the changes they made to the characters themselves. I really like that Jerry, who was only mentioned once in the 1985 version, has a much more prominent role in the series now. I love him so much. He's just a cute little French boy. I'm just oh, Jerry, you say the darndest things. And they also made the very, very dangerous choice to change Anne's romantic interest and everybody's fictional childhood crush, Gilbert Blythe. Oh, everybody had a crush on Gilbert Blythe, but personally, I had a crush on Tom Riddle, who's teenage Lord Voldemort, so I'm a weird child, yes. So, in this version, he's very toned down in his smugness, and instead of winking at Anne at a picnic, he saves her from Billy Andrews and his gang on the way to school. And I was like, ooh, that's very Prince Charming, but when I look back on it now, it actually fits a lot more of the character they're trying to create, which is more humble. He's still Gilbert, but since his father is ill, in this version, his maturity is accelerated to be much more like the version of him that Anne fell in love with. So he's already kind of that guy, that dream guy. However, I do feel like this change kind of affected some other scenes. Like, there's the infamous slate smashing scene where he pulls her pigtail and calls her carrots because her hair's really red, and she smashes a little slate, which is a chalkboard type thing that they write on back in the olden days. She just smashes it over his head. In this version, I feel like that whole scene didn't go off as well. That boy got slammed, but I didn't feel like he deserved it because he was so nice and he was so humble, and he didn't have that like smugness. So I felt like Anne had less of a reason to hate him, and it felt more like she was like her lashing out and her just mistreatment of him just didn't seem justified because they changed it to make Ruby have a crush on him. And all these little changes they had to make to accommodate this one change just kind of... It wasn't enough changes, I feel like. But, Season 2. Season 2. Let's talk about Season 2. With Season 2, I feel like the writers really listened to a lot of the criticisms about, like, the dark tones and not enough changes for the better. And they were like... Alright, let's give them what they want with Season 2. Season 2 opening was like, you want whimsy, you want color, you want change, bam, here it is. They delivered in like such a big way. I love just that opening shot of Season 2. It's just so magical, and Anne seems such more full of life, which was the character she is meant to be. And there was a lot... Season 1 had she had a lot of post-traumatic stress flashbacks from her time in the orphanage, and it was it was very dark, and I loved how this season just switched that up, but also there was still a lot of problems. The whole storyline, or I guess half the storyline, was the shady grifters, which I really liked that whole portion of the season with the grifters. Mr. Dunbar's so cute. Why do you have to be such a wicked man? And although it pained me to have Gilbert and Anne separated for a portion of the season, I also really liked the fact that Gilbert left Avonlea. Gilbert is developed as someone more than just a love interest when they literally put him on a boat on the other side of the world. And of course they introduce Bash, who's one of the best new characters. The whole season, the writers really tackled issues that dealt with racism, feminism, sexuality, which are risky topics to add into media while still being historically accurate and not, like, preachy. I feel like a lot of shows, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, it adds those, like, elements, but it just does it in a very disingenuous type of way. This felt very, like, natural. I really loved Cole as a new character, and he added the LGBTQ elements to the show, and we should stay on that, because I watch a lot of period dramas that we'll no doubt go over if this series continues on, and a good chunk of them erase being gay from history like it wasn't a thing. It's usually not intentional, they just don't discuss it, and it makes it seem like different sexualities are something wholly modern and it only happened today, which is incredibly false. Like, and they also made Aunt Josephine lesbian, which definitely was a change I didn't know I wanted, but it totally worked with her original character, who didn't get married in the original source material. And they're like, hey, let's add a lesbian. I'm like, that's good. I approve. 10 out of 10. So, and I also feel like a lot of Season 2 was developing the bonds of the characters of Avonlea, and it felt like a real community, like how Animal Crossing feels like a real community. It wasn't really focused on Anne herself, because Anne of Green Gables, basically the novel series, there's 9 novels. They go through Anne's entire life, and I feel like that's one way to introduce a community, but this was a better way. I felt like, oh, I love Jerry, I love Cole, I love all these other characters in her life. Of course, I love Diana, and I just feel like there was just so much more of that this season. And One of my favorite scenes of the season. Sorry for the spoilers. I'm already breaking the spoiler rule, but I cheered so hard when Prissy Andrews literally booked it and left gross Mr. Phillips at the altar. And that scene where she's just running out in the snow with the girls, she's in a wedding dress and they're just tussling around and playing and having fun. That's poetic cinema. I love that scene just so much because it's just so much full of life and just friendship and 10 out of 10 good times ahead. So I felt like this season was really good for that. Like, I think we only saw like some of Prissy and some of Jane, but and some of Moody. I love Moody. He just messes up everything, but I love him. He's so relatable. Moody is such a mood. Like, so there's all these little side characters that I love in addition to Anne, and I just love that about this season. This season really cemented that, and then season 3, which we're going to talk about right now, season 3, that kind of was just like it set those characters up to love them and have them more developed in season 3, which I was like, yes. And it's beautiful. So season 3, the season we didn't know was going to be the last season. I I downloaded a VPN so I could watch the Canadian release because season 2 just cemented the series just so much. After season 2, I felt like, oh, this is one of my favorite series. I love it so much. Little did I know it would be the last season. So this one's kind of more focused on Anne. Everybody is growing up. There's graduation. I got this like sad feeling, but I was like, don't worry, because there's still so much more to cover in Anne's life. Like, I guess this is probably where I think the first movie would have ended. It ended Anne going off to Queen's Academy College, and kind of she's grown away from Marilla and Matthew. It's a really big season about like growing up, so I feel like the whole class just they did it. They graduated, but they still like they added more elements like with the whole newspaper debacle. There was Billy almost assaulting Josie. I was like, I never thought I'd care about Josie Pye because Josie Pye in the original was kind of obsessed. In the 1985 version. She just hung on Gilbert, and it was kind of like, ugh, I don't like her because one, she's kind of mean. Also, she's hanging over Gilbert. Ugh. But in this one, she really she's one of the characters who got kind of upgraded. And the changes, I feel like, made her character better. So in this version, she's not interested in Gilbert at all. Because Ruby likes Gilbert. And, it's kind of that whole thing. You don't like who your friends like because that'd be a betraying to her friends. And she gets mad at Anne for talking to Gilbert, even though he totally talked to her. But that's the reason kind of why Anne wants to stay away, because Ruby has a big crush on Gilbert. And Ruby, that's definitely a mood. I've been there multiple times. Yeah, so Josie Pye doesn't have a crush, but instead she's going with the equally mean Billy Andrews, who's Prissy Andrews and Jane Andrews. The whole Andrews clan is together. Jane's just kind of off on her own. Prissy, of course, after she runs away from marrying their gross teacher, she wants to take over the father, like the business, but he's gonna give it to Billy, who's just a dummy. Yeah, and so Josie, Billy kind of gets all, oh, you're seeing it. Anne writes about how, about respect and consent in the newspaper without everybody's permission, and it just kind of becomes this whole thing, like, oh yeah, like, the whole silence is compliance thing. Anne didn't want to be silent, but everybody else wanted to be silent and keep their heads down. And that was a really big issue to tackle, and I was like, yes, they did it. And they also tackled issues with Native American and all the schools, and Anne gets a Native American friend in this, and then she's taken away to a school, and they don't get her back by the end of the season, so we'll never know what happened with her, and it's really, really sad. Yeah, but a lot of issues were tackled, which was also a thing about season 2, which, good. We need to tackle more social issues that are very much alive today. And I feel like the whole... Oh god, I'm trying to look back. Oh yes, and guess what? They bumped up the romance, so season 1 kind of very little romance. Season 2 also very brief romance, but they bumped it up. So instead of kind of just showing around Josie, Gilbert actually attracts the attention of a girl in Charlottetown at the doctor's office he's interning at, named Winifred, who's not... She is a new character from the original. I think in the original he was getting married to somebody else, but I don't think her name was Winifred. I'm trying to look back. I haven't read the series in like a long, long time, so I'm not entirely sure kind of what's changed from the books. I'm mostly going off the 1985 version because I've been watching that lately, because I've just had to watch so many things in the quarantine. But I saw Anne very recently, so I didn't feel like watching the entire thing for this whole review. But yes, it's very... You get kind of frustrated because things just keep going wrong for them. They try to write a letter, and that letter is kind of disconnect. But they definitely, like, since they're growing up, they definitely kind of bumped up their relationship, and I was like, oh. But now I'll never know what happens, except I do know in the novel they get married and they have 7 beautiful kids. Yeah, so there's unfortunate circumstances, but I know it's safe to say that this is a great adaptation. I don't think they'll be doing another one for some time, which is good because they definitely don't need to do another one for some time. This one's really beautiful. All the costumes are really beautiful. Oh my god, Anne has so many, like, wonderful, like, grown-up dresses for season 3. Just, her wardrobe for season 3 is like, ooh. And just, that whole kind of aesthetic in general it's a very cottagecore themed show. So if you like countrycore, cottagecore, it's definitely worth a watch. I just don't know much to say. I'd definitely say it's one of the best adaptations of the series, next to the 1985 version. I know, I'm trying not to compare them too much because I feel like they did different things, and I feel like there's not one that's necessarily better than the other. I mean, you can have your opinions on that, but I don't like to say, like, oh, this is better than the other unless one does something, like, entirely wrong. Like, I'll definitely say that the original Beauty and the Beast is better than the live action version. I'll say the original Gem and the Holograms cartoon definitely better than the live action version, which was only in cinemas for 2 weeks because it was just such a train wreck. I might do a room about that later. But that's pretty much all I have to say for Anne. I love this series. It's where I got my island's name. It's just good time, good time. I guess if I had to give the series a number rating, I would definitely give it like an 8 or a 9 because it is really I'd say worth watching. And so at this point, I'm probably done with the room. And yeah, I like how it turned out. Of course, you could say my entire house is the cottagecore. And of course, I had Diana added because she's Diana. And of course, I have my Tom as Gilbert in this room. Although, to be honest, he's Tom Riddle. I guess I'm gonna do like an introduction thing because I'm not explaining this super well, his character. I just call him like, hey, guess what, you're Tom Riddle. Everybody's like, oh my god, is he evil? I thought he was a nice boy. But yeah, I'll talk about this later. This is pretty much all I've had to say about the series. Let me know what you think, because I love to talk to more Anne with any fans. I'll definitely be answering a few comments. I just love this series so much. I want to continue to talk about it, unfortunately, because it's not around anymore. They canceled it. And I complained to my friend for like an hour, and he didn't even watch the show. I was like, they canceled Anne with an E. Somebody call the police. Yeah, my best friend John has to put up with a lot, because usually these rants go just straight to him. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But thanks for joining me. Hopefully next time I can do... I want to do this again because I had a lot of fun with it. I don't know if you guys are having a lot of fun with it. You can leave, I don't know, movie recommendations down in the comments. I might decide to watch something completely blind and new, but for now I'm going to be doing a bunch of reviews. I was thinking maybe next time The Secret Garden, because I also love The Secret Garden. The Labyrinth is my favorite movie, so I definitely want to talk about that. I also kind of want to talk about The Phantom of the Opera, which I already love, and the 2004 film was a complete disaster, so I really want to talk about that. But thank you all for joining me. I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye bye now.